Hi there, welcome to Boxing Deep Dive. I'm Lyndon Osking, and great to have you along for another episode of Dream Fights. And geez, we've had some rippers lately. Been a bit light on for talent in the last few weeks, only been myself and Mike Altamura, but I'm very happy to announce tonight that one of the pillars of the show, the one and only Grant Tassie Brown, is back. Welcome back, Tassie.
Thanks, Lyndon. Well, I was here from day one, mate. I feel like I'm one of the long-lasting members of the show, and yeah, mate, it's good to be back. I can't let you guys have all the fun. Obviously, we all know what I bring to the table when it comes to boxing, and it's just great to be back, mate. Yeah.
Awesome, mate. And we've had a bit of fun in the last couple of weeks, Mike, although it hasn't been overly as exciting as what it could be, of course. Not only have we had not the debate and discussion about it, but obviously there's not really a tiebreaker there. But we've done pretty good. The response has been good to having you on. So, as always, great to have you all part of the show.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's a little tricky when you don't have a deciding vote when you're on different sides of the fence on who may win a particular bout. So I like it. Tassie always brings a little bit of controversy to the program. So sometimes it's good, sometimes not so good, but it definitely always brings some entertainment.
Well, I wasn't going to bring up the Jeff Fennick Barry McGuigan fight again, but I'm sure Tassie will at some stage, won't you, Tassie?
I picked Fennick.
Mate, even bigger than that, I believe the great Harry Greb, rest in peace, has an Instagram page now. I wonder who's behind it.
I'm not involved in any Harry Greb appreciation societies, but we should do a dream fight one time, Harry Greb versus Marvin Hagler. All you guys will pick Hagler, and I'll just be rolling my eyes the entire time.
Don't necessarily judge that. I don't know what I'd pick. I want to say a shout out to he's been asking for where I've been for a while now. He's our number one viewer, Bill Hack, down in Norfolk, Tasmania. I'm back, Bill, and he watches the show every week, but he's been a bit, upset I haven't been on. So I'm back, brother.
Well, thanks, Bill, for continuing to watch, even though the star of the show hasn't been here. So great to have you along, mate. And I've got to say, we've got another young viewer as well, James Gorman. He messaged me every single week with feedback of all the shows. He watches them all. This show, the Classic Fights, the Deep Dive, Talking Boxing, always gives me plenty of feedback and suggestions. So thanks, James. Thanks, Bill, and all the other viewers out there. Without you guys, we obviously don't.
Is James a Tassie fan or not? Is he a Tassie fan?
No, I think he thinks you're full of shit. I think he's a Mike Altamura fan, I think. I'm only joking.
You can be a fan of both of us. It's permitted. Tassie's one of my few friends in boxing, genuinely.
Yeah, that's good, mate. No, he's wouldn't be the same without him.
Same, Mike.
Yeah. Great to have you along. All right, so this week, Tassie, it was your choice, mate, and who did you have?
It's one of the biggest ones on this show ever. It's the Golden Boy Oscar De La Hoya versus Canelo Alvarez.
Yeah, well, it's a great fight there. I'll just go back for a sec there because just get the terms of the fight there, Tassie. 12 rounds for the World Super Welterweight Championship. I'll put it at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. And it would be a massive fight. So, without stating the obvious, what caused you to come up with this fight?
Well, I mean, it's sort of funny. I mean, look, Canelo would have grown up looking up to De La Hoya. No doubt, being a Mexican-American, and obviously Oscar's very big on his Mexican heritage. So look what Oscar done in his career. Olympic gold medalist, changed boxing at the time, become pretty much the next Sugar Ray Leonard. So the marketable type, the good-looking guy. That was a great fighter, won five or six divisions. Fought all the big fights, fought Chavez, Whitaker, Trinidad Mosley, Hopkins. He fought everyone, Mayweather, Pacquiao, and it's just unbelievable. So Canelo would have grown up looking up to him. So De La Hoya signs Canelo. He's his promoter for so many of his major fights from day dot, right? So slowly Canelo is getting up to that, De La Hoya standard. and then they split. So, which I was shocked about. So, obviously they're on very good terms now. So I sort of look at, I think, well, did De La Hoya ever think that Canelo would be on his level? Did Canelo ever think that he'd be on De La Hoya's level? I believe Canelo does now. Believes he's probably surpassed Oscar. But has he? And when you break it down, at their best, who they fought, and I know Canelo's got probably the less losses at the moment, but De La Hoya fought everyone. And some of them fights De La Hoya lost probably weren't losses. So I think it's a pick and fight. It's the past versus the present, but they both did fight at the same weight. So, De La Hoya, for me, went up in divisions, but a lot of his bigger fights are at waterweight, light middleweight. Canelo's really been light middleweight. He's gone up since then, but we first knew of Canelo at light middleweight, where he fought Mosley, where he obviously fought Mayweather, where they met at catchweight. So, yeah, look, it's huge. They were both, one was the promoter, one was the fighter. They were obviously probably best friends at one time. And it's the old versus the new. It's just everything.
Mike, before we get to your comments on this fight, we've got to go back to last week because we had the poll. Aaron Pryor versus Miguel Cotto. Tassie, I'm not sure whether you saw it. Mike, I think we both went for...
Pryor.
Yeah, we went for Pryor. Yeah, we both went for Pryor. Well,
Pryor.
The fans, for once, have actually agreed with the experts. Aaron Pryor, 72%. To Miguel Cotto, 28%, and I think about 20% of those that voted for Pryor, or 25%, said he would do it by knockout. So for once,
Chinny at that weight.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. So Mike, for once we get the win on the board, which is justification for us having the show for a change.
Yeah, although my grievance is that so many people picking Pryor on points, that ain't going to decision. No. The only decision that's going to happen in that bout is the referee's going to have to decide to stop the bout when Pryor knocks him out.
Yeah.
Definitely, I couldn't ever in any world see. You got to look, if Arguello and guys with that ring dexterity aren't going 12 rounds with Pryor, there's no way on earth Cotto is lasting 12. Cotto who got stopped by Pacquiao, Cotto who got stopped by Margarito, who's knocked down by Ricardo Torres, shook up by Corley, guys like that. No way he's going 12 rounds with Pryor.
Mike, so are you trying to imply that this was a Jeff Fennick, Barry McGuigan situation, or what? Is this Jeff Fennick, Barry McGuigan?
No, this was a good fight. It was an interesting fight. I just think that there can be great fights where you feel comfortable and confident about who the winner's going to be.
Yeah. Well, so what are your initial thoughts? Actually, before we get going there, Mike, I'm going to go to the record of Oscar. 39-6, 30 KOs. You can see that all those titles from super featherweight right up to middleweight. I won't go through them, there's too many of them. He had so many memorable fights and wins. I've just listed a few of them there. The win over Paez, who I used to love as a fighter, Jorge Paez, Ruiz, Hernandez, Chavez twice, Whittaker, Camacho, Corte, Vargas, and Sturm to name a few. But and obviously the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 2014. So do you think, Mike, this is an instance where with De La Hoya, I mean, obviously he was known as a golden boy, but he more than earned that mantle, didn't he? Because he never shirked an issue against anyone at any time and in any era.
Bruce Trampler, the longtime matchmaker and Hall of Fame matchmaker from Top Rank, has a legendary story he'll often tell about De La Hoya. When De La Hoya was on the way up, they would call him and his team in for a meeting, and they would give him three options, and they'd say, all right, this is this guy, this is his credentials, this is this guy, or there's this guy. And Oscar would sit there quietly and let all the teams sit there and discuss and talk about, oh, this guy's hard because of this, and this guy brings this, or whatever. And then after maybe 30, 40 minutes of a meeting, they'd go to Oscar and say to him, who do you want to fight? And Oscar consistently would say, whatever's the biggest opportunity and whatever pays the most, that's the fight I want.
Yeah.
And that always was the way that he went about his business in his career. From lightweight all the way up to middleweight, he ducked nobody. Like, there's not one fight throughout Oscar's career. Maybe it didn't happen because of circumstance, but he didn't duck any challenge, didn't duck any fighters. You never heard him say that Sugar Shane Mosley's too fast or too fresh or too quick or whatever it may be. And I think that's firstly why he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but secondly why he was the biggest star of a generation that included so many great fighters. But he was the biggest star of that era.
He was, and Tassie, yeah, I think love him or hate him with the Golden Boy, and let's face it, most people loved him, but that was probably one of the reasons why it wasn't, because he never, look, he lost a lot of big fights, he also won a lot of big fights, but I think he has that universal recognition of being a very well-respected fighter, whether you like it or not, just because of the way he went about his career.
I could go for Oscar De La Hoya's career, and I could probably go back with a fine-tooth comb and probably make him undefeated.
Okay.
Like, I don't think he lost the Trinidad fight to this day, even though he gave up the last 3 rounds. I don't think he lost the fight. The Mosey one, the first one, was maybe just, but was competitive. I believe he definitely won the Mosey rematch. To me, he doesn't go up and fight Hopkins. I think that was just too much of a big, but he did. And then, Mayweather Pacquiao late in his career, but I'm talking at his peak. The Trinidad Mosley, and I wouldn't have made him go up to fight Hopkins. He easily could have changed a few things and been undefeated. There were some close calls there, and but he fought everyone. And the thing is, and Mike will appreciate this, he beats guys like Obar Carr in between super fights. He fights Obar Carr, a guy of that quality, in between like Chavez and Whittaker. Like he takes big fights, even though that wasn't a mainstream fight, but that was a great fighter, as you know, Mike. Obar Carr, he fights a guy like that as a warm-up. Like, he fought everyone. He probably took Whittaker on too soon, but he fought Whittaker, Trinidad, Vargas. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and you can see even there, Mike, he took Chavez pretty early in his career. As Tazzy said, might have been a bit early for Whittaker. That was, to me, still a very, very close fight, the Whittaker fight. But he jumped straight in the deep end as far as getting big fights early in his career, didn't he? He didn't wait. He wanted those big fights early.
Yeah, even guys like Ike Corte, feared by everybody, but Oscar jumped straight in the fire, and then, like Tazzy said, pretty much through to him winning his first world championship, which was the WBO. Was it WBO 135 title?
130.
He never. Oh, it was actually
Jimmy
130 against
Bradle.
Bradell. Sorry. Yeah. From that point on, he never really stepped back in competition. So you're talking basically, 35 fights straight thereabouts. He never really dropped back in competition. So, yeah, he accumulated a few losses in the end, but most of the losses were post-prime, and they came against fight in the pound-for-pound elite. He never fought and lost to a guy that was just hand-picked for him.
Yeah, well, that's probably brings us to our next point with his opponent, of course, the Canelo, because his last fight maybe could have been accused of that. But I was just going to say, well, let's just have a look at him first. 57-2-2, 39 KOs. Canelo Alvarez, of course, I'm referring to. Saul, if the younger fans out there don't actually know, he does have a first name. Canelo is not it. That's his nickname, Saul Canelo Alvarez. Look at those titles that he's won there, and I'm pretty sure I've got them all, but who knows, there could be one or two I've missed. He's won that many of them. That many that I could barely fit in a few of his biggest wins. So over Erislandy Lara, Miguel Cotto, Amir Khan, Gennady Golovkin, Daniel Jacobs, Sergey Kovalev, Billy Joe Saunders. You could probably throw in another few fights there. But Mike, do you agree that Canelo, Tassie mentioned before that he would have modelled his career as far as being, maybe looking up to Oscar when he was younger, but do you think he's almost mirrored his career after him as well? Because he's another one that's never shirked an issue fighting the best.
Yeah, they've always taken the biggest challenges. Even Golovkin, the first bout, even though that was a controversial draw, a lot of people thought Gennady shaded it. A lot of people in the industry felt that came too early. A lot of people felt Mayweather came too early, but the timing of his career has been near perfect. And I know right now he's coming off a loss, but he's coming off a loss going up to fight for, the light heavyweight world title to Bivol. There's no shame in that. In terms of what he's accomplished, he's a bit of a different star because I know he speaks English now, but 80% of his English vocabulary is swear words or diss words. But he's similar to Oscar in that he's a pin-up and he's a generational type talent that he's the biggest Latino star in the sport, which is what Oscar was. I don't think anyone is ever going to really hit in this era now the fandom that Oscar did. Probably Ryan Garcia had the potential more than anyone else to have that crossover appeal with the young teenage girls, but Canelo, in terms of the Latino audience, is just massive. I mean, whenever a fight of his is announced, the whole industry really revolves around that particular date, and rightfully so. And, he, like you said, he's gone up in weight. He's fought the best of the best, and I feel like incrementally he's improved and become a smarter fighter throughout his journey too.
Tazzy, do you agree with that he does get a bit of a rough deal sometimes because he's a little bit like Oscar. He's loved by the hordes, but there are some haters out there who question who he's fought and when he's fought them. And I mean, you can't please everyone all the time, but I personally think he's probably the closest fighter in this, since Oscar, as far as his appeal goes, his crossover appeal more than importantly. But do you think he's been a little bit roughly judged by his opponents? For the opponents he's had.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, look, I know even a few of the Mexicans that I think Juan Marquez is a bit jealous of him. I think he doesn't really rate Canelo. And I think Chavez Sr.'s okay with him now. But I think Sr. even had some issues. So there's probably a bit of jealousy there because he's going to go down as one of the greatest Mexicans ever, if not the greatest. So he's, I think, like anything in life, Lyndon, when you have success, you get haters. So I think Canelo has done an amazing job with his career. De La Hoya obviously had a big part of his career early on. He's another guy who hasn't ducked anyone. He fought guys like Edison Lara, Austin Trout. He had trouble with Lara, but I mean, Mayweather probably too early, but he took on Mayweather. He took on the Triple G, even though the first one was controversial. He backed it back up and won the second. And then he went on his super middleweight rampage, which we've witnessed recently. And some of these, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, Callum Smith and guys like
Rocky Fielding,
the guys that he's beaten from England and
yeah,
Billy Joe Saunders. I mean, look, they were undefeated guys that all had a belt. Okay, they were from England, not America. They weren't African American. They weren't Mexican, but you can't do anything but beat the guy who's got a belt and an unbeaten record. So, Canelo, mate, he's been the most active fighter. And I'll tell you now, after he beats Triple G, he'll fight Bivol. He'll want that rematch and he'll win that rematch. So, Canelo is this era. Canelo is the current De La Hoya Mayweather of this era. He's the guy. He's the main event. He's the showstopper. Yeah, I mean, Canelo is just a great fighter. He's one of my favourite fighters.
Mike, I think one thing's very evident from these clips they've got on there now, and it's very pivotal to this fight, is what a different beast that Canelo Alvarez was at junior middleweight compared to light heavyweight.
A lot faster, better combination punching, physically more of a force. The other thing that I'm just seeing in all these picks, as a reminder, is just that I think this fight's going to be very left-hand dominant, both sides, and I think it's who has control off of the jab and the hook that's going to dictate the pace of the fight.
Yeah, it's a ripper. Well, as we said at the start, this is for we'll call it the World Super Welterweight title. We won't designate an actual belt, although being Mexican or both Mexican or / American, Mexican will most likely be the WBC belt. But anyway, we'll call it just the World Super Welterweight title. So let's get into, while we're here, guys, I'm going to start with you, Tazzy. It's your segment. Who wins and why?
As I said, I'm a boxing fan, and I love both these fighters. De La Hoya was my one of my favourite fighters of the 90s. It was pretty much, for me, it was Pernell Whitaker, Costa Zoo, Roy Jones Jr. and Oscar De La Hoya. They were my top guys in the 90s. And, Canelo is one of my favourites currently. I picked them, as I said, because they had history together. As I said, when Canelo was under Golden Boy with Oscar. I've got to go with a prime Oscar De La Hoya at light middleweight, working the left jab, bouncing on his toes, having a higher punch output than Canelo, even though Canelo punched more than he does now. He had more of a work rate back then, but I think the left hook would land on Canelo. I think De La Hoya's, the fact that he'd been in so many big fights, so he wouldn't be worried about the stage. Not that Canelo does either, but I think the old teacher schools the young pupil. And I think Oscar goes on in a very tough fight, where we might see Canelo drop for the first time, goes on and wins a unanimous point decision to the Golden Boy, Oscar De La Hoya.
Okay, so Oscar De La Hoya in a close decision win there. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, so one of the interesting facts is in this bout, even though Oscar had some great moments at junior middleweight, he beat Castillejo. Of course, he had that legendary, was it the 11th round stoppage over Fernando Vargas in what really was a super fight. And similar to this situation, Vargas was considered the young hand, coming through, the young bull who was going to knock Oscar off as the biggest Latino star in boxing. But what Oscar had to learn was how to manage his skills and how to adjust, because he wasn't a natural junior middleweight. He had to grow and build into the weight. And I think some of the challenges he faced are similar to the ones that we're seeing Canelo now face at super middleweight and light heavy, where you need to be a little bit more defensively smarter and energy efficient and know how to work your ways inside. So I think light middleweight is the perfect balance for this fight. I just look at it that Oscar, when he was fresh and really, really focused and on song, he might have had his rocky moments at times, but he didn't have bad nights against guys whose feet were slower than his. He had trouble with guys who were good movers, and Shane Mosley, Pernell Whitaker, good movers, fast hands. I think that Canelo's got fast hands, or reasonably fast hands and good timing, but his feet are relatively slow. And I just think that no matter how game or how well Canelo might perform early, once Oscar got his rhythm down, I think that separates him as the fight rolls on. And I see it like an 8-4, 9-3 kind of deal, shading Oscar De La Hoya's way.
Yeah, okay, so that's 2 for Oscar on points. I think for the first time ever, guys, I think I'm going to have to make it a trilogy here, because I agree with both of what you guys have said. You both hit it right on the head. I think, Mike, I really agree with you that even though Canelo was a very volume-orientated puncher at Super Welterweight or junior middleweight, I think Oscar more than goes with him. He loved to throw multiple punches as well. I think the fact that Canelo, even though he threw a lot of punches, didn't really move the feet really at all. And if he did, it was in a plodding sort of motion. I think that would really work in Oscar's favour as well. I think I'm not sure which one of you guys mentioned it, but it would definitely be a rip, hook, uppercut fest with the left hand. And I think Oscar would have more the speed. Canelo would have more the power with those rips and hooks. Yeah. And I just think Canelo would definitely have his moments. He might even drop Oscar. I'm not so sure I could see him, Oscar dropping Canelo, to be honest, but I can see him landing 3, 4, 5 punch combinations throughout the fight. And I think this weight, actually, more than any of them, really suited Oscar as well. I think obviously he was probably a more explosive fighter at a lighter weight, but I think this division really suited his body type. Middleweight was probably just a bit too high for him, but I think this is his peak. And I just think he gets the job done. The volume of punches gets him over the line. And I think, again, with you guys, I think it'd be a close, well, I won't say close decision. I'm probably thinking 8 rounds to 4. Worst case for Oscar, 7 rounds to 5 for Oscar to get the point. So yeah, there you go. So all three of us have gone for a very similar type of fight. So I'm interested to see what everyone else out there thinks. I think more than anything, though, Tassie, I'm with you. I think you said it at the start. It's probably one of the best matched fights. I would probably put it along the line of a Leonard De La Hoya fight as well. I think that was probably the same type of matchup. But just as far as appeal to all types of fans, the networks would have loved it, the media would have loved it, obviously the fans would have loved it, everyone in all walks of life would have loved it. It would have made this probably could have been $1 billion fight, really, wouldn't it? Really.
We're doing on Cinco de Mayo.
Oh, I have to be Cinco de Mayo. I'm not sure the T-Mobile Arena would be big enough, to be honest. They'd probably have to have it at the new the Raiders Stadium. We might have to change that to the Raiders Stadium when they get about 80,000, I think, because that's what they would need. What do you reckon, Mike? It would just be probably the biggest Mexican fight of all time, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think probably Raiders Stadium. You could see it going out to Cowboy Stadium as well in Texas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I think Dallas, Texas. It would have to be a stadium type fight, huge atmosphere. Who's the hero in the fight? De La Hoya? You think?
I'll put my hand up.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tassie, first.
I just want to be. I want to have my own nacho and taco stand to sell food there.
You make a killing. But to answer your question, Mike, I think De La Hoya would be the good guy, and I think Canelo would turn a little bit into the bad guy. Because you don't really get a lot of... I know it probably changed a little bit in the Mayweather fight with the spite, but I don't think that would happen with Canelo. I think Canelo obviously has a dark side, is what he's shown when he does tend to talk it up a bit. I think Canelo would be the bad guy in this, as strange as that might seem. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm thinking along those same lines too.
Yeah, Tassie, what sort of pay-per-views and money do you think would be made in this fight? It would be astronomical. Wouldn't it? Probably the biggest gate and purses of all time. It'd probably surpass Mayweather Pacquiao.
Yeah, to pass Mayweather Pacquiao, Mayweather McGregor, pass all that. Yeah, it'd be next level. Next level.
It would be. So there it is anyway, guys. So that's a unanimous decision from all of us. All three of us went for De La Hoya by decision. Mike, you're up next week. I know we've got you for a few weeks at least, hopefully. So have a think about what you're going to do next week. I think you've got a lot to live up to for this one, to be honest. I think it's going to be hard to top, but I know you'll have a good think about it. Harry Greb versus Marvin Hagler. Who knows? We might throw that in there, but it'll be up to you.
No, I reckon Mike will do Jack Russell versus Barry Sewell.
I think we saw that fight. for the two listeners that actually know what he's referring to, they're in stitches. Everyone else is just thinking, what on earth?
Yeah. But I got no doubt you'll come up with a ripper fight, mate. So again, great to have you along. Tassie, great to have you back, mate. It's good to have the third wheel, I suppose. It's just been me and Mike for the last couple of weeks, so good to have you back, and look forward to next week. Until then, anyone out there's got some suggestions, send them in. We'd love to hear from you guys. We thank everyone out there that watches and sends us comments and all that sort of stuff, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks again, guys.